In the scorching heat of the Sahara Desert, Dr. Leila Farouk wiped the sweat from her brow and leaned closer to the object protruding from the sand. For weeks, her team had been digging near what they believed was an ancient caravan route, guided by faint satellite imagery hinting at unusual subsurface patterns. But this wasn't just another pottery shard or weathered statue. This was something else entirely. The object was a golden sundial, its surface polished to an unnatural sheen despite the millennia it had spent buried in the desert. Unlike any sundial Leila had ever encountered, this one featured not 4, but 7 radial sections. The 7th segment was inlaid with lapis lazuli and small red garnets, forming a dazzling mosaic. Surrounding the gemstones were intricately carved hieroglyphs that her trained eye immediately recognized as a prayer to Khepri, the scarab-headed god of rebirth and the rising sun. Leila's breath hitched as she traced the glyphs with her gloved fingers. "The gift of Khepri, keeper of time," she murmured, translating the inscription aloud for her team. "This is unusual," said Dr. Omar Rashid, her colleague and physicist, who crouched beside her. "A 7-season sundial? That's unheard of in Egyptian history." They recognized 3 seasons: Ankh, Peret, and Shimu. "What's this 7th one supposed to be?" Leila stood and shielded her eyes from the blazing sun, scanning the desert for clues. "I don't know. But whatever it is, it was important enough to merit gemstones." This sundial wasn't just decorative, it was symbolic. One of the graduate students interrupted, waving a small device. "Dr. Farouk, we're picking up strange magnetic fluctuations around this artifact. It's faint, but the readings don't match anything we've seen in this area before." Leila and Omar exchanged a glance. "Magnetic fluctuations?" Omar said. "Out here. That's odd. The Sahara doesn't have much geomagnetic activity." He took the device and began scanning the sundial himself. The readings spiked as he moved it closer to the 7th segment. "It's as if the 7th division is resonating with something," he said, frowning. Leila crouched again, examining the carvings more closely. "This isn't just a sundial," she said. "This is a key." Flashback to 2500 BCE. The Nile glistened under the mid-morning sun as Pharaoh Nefermat, ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt, strode through the granite halls of his palace. By his side was Hikanu, the royal astronomer and advisor. Hikanu was a wiry man with sharp, calculating eyes and an air of quiet authority that set him apart from the other advisors. He carried a rolled papyrus in one hand and a bronze armillary sphere in the other. "My pharaoh," Hikanu began, his voice steady but urgent, "there is a matter of great importance regarding the heavens." Nefermat gestured for him to continue. "Speak. During the last inundation, my apprentices and I observed something unprecedented. The stars, the planets, they behaved differently during a brief period after the floods receded. It is as if time itself slowed." The pharaoh stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "Slowed? What do you mean?" "It is difficult to explain," Hikanu said, unrolling the papyrus to reveal a detailed star chart. "For several days, the movement of celestial bodies deviated from their usual patterns. Crops in the field grew faster than they should have. The sun seemed to hang in the sky longer than usual. And there were other anomalies. Such as..." Hikanu hesitated, then lowered his voice. "During this period, I conducted experiments with workers in the fields. They reported that objects became easier to lift, as if the earth itself had grown lighter. A stone that would normally require 10 men to move could be carried by 2. The pharaoh's brow furrowed. "And what do you make of this?" "I believe the gods have gifted us a window, a season unlike any other. I have named it Peret-Ankh, the season of life beyond." Nefermat considered this, his mind already racing. If Hikanu spoke the truth, this anomaly could elevate Egypt to heights unimaginable. With such power, they could raise monuments to rival the heavens themselves, secure their place as the chosen people of the gods, and extend their dominion across the known world. "Can this 7th season be harnessed?" he asked. Hikanu nodded slowly. "I believe so, my pharaoh. But it will require precise calculations and sacred rituals to align the anomaly with our needs. And there is one more thing. Nefermat raised an eyebrow. Go on. The anomaly appears to grow stronger when the stars align in certain configurations. Specifically, during the time of the Sothic Rising, when the star Sirius heralds the flooding of the Nile. The pharaoh's lips curled into a smile. Then we shall prepare for the next rising. And you, Hikanu, shall lead this effort. In the present day, Leila's team continued their excavation, uncovering fragments of what appeared to be an ancient mechanism. Gears, pulleys, and reflective bronze surfaces lay scattered in the sand. Omar picked up one of the pieces, a disc engraved with concentric circles and hieroglyphs. This isn't just decorative, he muttered. This is machinery. Bronze Age Egyptians didn't build machinery, one of the students pointed out. Their tools were basic: pulleys, ramps, levers. This looks advanced. That's what makes it so extraordinary, Omar replied. This is centuries ahead of its time. Leila knelt beside another piece of the mechanism, brushing away the sand. The hieroglyphs etched into the metal described a ritual involving the sundial and a temple dedicated to Khepri. This must be part of what they use to harness the anomaly, she said. If we can reconstruct it, we might be able to. Don't even finish that sentence, Omar interrupted. You're not seriously suggesting we activate this thing? Leila gave him a wry smile. Isn't that what scientists do? Push boundaries? Yes, but not when the boundaries involve ancient technology and potentially dangerous anomalies, he retorted. We have no idea what this thing could do. Exactly, Leila said, her eyes gleaming with determination. And that's why we need to find out. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the dig site, the air grew unnaturally still. Leila felt a chill run down her spine, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. For a brief moment, the seventh segment of the sundial seemed to shimmer, its gemstones catching a light that didn't come from the setting sun. Unbeknownst to Leila and her team, they had already begun to awaken the seventh season. Leila Farouk stared at the reconstructed sundial in the center of her team's makeshift lab. The desert heat had given way to the cool night air, but the energy in the camp was electric. Surrounding the artifact were pieces of the mysterious mechanism they had unearthed: gears, mirrored panels, and bronze plates etched with hieroglyphs. The fragments hinted at a level of sophistication that seemed almost impossible for the Bronze Age. Leila couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension. If their interpretation of the artifact's purpose was correct, they were on the brink of uncovering a secret that had been lost for over 4 millennia. Omar stood nearby, arms crossed and his expression skeptical. You really think this thing could explain how the pyramids were built? He asked, nodding toward the sundial. I don't know, Leila admitted, but it's clear that the Egyptians were working with something beyond our understanding. This isn't just an artifact, it's a blueprint for how they manipulated time and space. Flashback to 2500 BCE. The royal city of Memphis buzzed with activity as workers and priests prepared for the activation of the Khepri mechanism. Under the watchful eye of Pharaoh Nefermat and Hikanu, the priests constructed a towering contraption in the temple courtyard. The mechanism was a marvel of ancient engineering, a circular platform surrounded by tall, reflective panels angled toward the sky. In its center stood the golden sundial, its seventh segment glittering like a star. Hikanu moved among the workers, issuing instructions with precise authority. The mirrors must be perfectly aligned, he said, gesturing toward the panels. When the Sothic star rises, it will focus the energy of the heavens onto the dial. If we fail to align it properly, the anomaly will collapse. Nefermat watched from his throne, his expression a mix of pride and anticipation. Tell me, Hikanu, he said, what will happen when the seventh season begins? The astronomer bowed before answering. Time will bend to our will, my pharaoh. Within the bounds of the anomaly, the laws of the gods themselves will change. Stone will become weightless. Crops will grow in an instant. Our builders will accomplish in weeks what would otherwise take decades. And the risks? The pharaoh asked, his tone sharp. Hikanu hesitated. The anomaly is unstable. Those who linger too long within its influence may experience side effects, aging, sickness, perhaps even death. The pharaoh's gaze hardened. Then we must ensure it is used wisely. Let the sacrifices of the few secure the glory of Egypt. In the present day, Leila's team continued their analysis of the artifact. They had pieced together fragments of the hieroglyphs found on the mechanism, which described the seventh season as Peret-Ankh, or the season of life beyond. The texts detailed how the Egyptians had harnessed this anomaly to perform feats that defied the known laws of physics. It's not just about time slowing down, Leila explained during a team meeting. The anomaly affects all physical laws. Gravity weakens, making heavy objects easier to lift. Chemical reactions accelerate, which could explain how they created advanced materials that we can't replicate today. Even biological processes are altered, plants grow faster, wounds heal quicker. That explains the precision of their engineering, Omar said. The pyramids, the obelisks, they weren't just monuments. They were products of a civilization operating in an entirely different physical reality. But how did they control it? One of the students asked. This kind of anomaly couldn't be random. Leila held up a fragment of the mechanism, a bronze disc engraved with concentric circles and tiny symbols. This was their control system, she said. The sundial acted as a key, and the mechanism amplified the anomaly. By aligning the sundial with the stars and performing specific rituals, they could create a localized bubble of the seventh season. Omar frowned. Localized. You mean it didn't affect the entire region? Exactly, Leila said. The anomaly was confined to specific areas, like the building sites of the pyramids. That's why we don't see evidence of these effects everywhere. In 2500 BCE, the priests of Khepri activated the mechanism for the first time. As the star Sirius rose above the horizon, its light reflected off the mirrored panels and converged on the sundial. The air around the temple courtyard grew thick and charged, as if a storm were brewing. Workers and onlookers watched in awe as the sundial began to glow, its gemstones pulsing with an otherworldly light. Hikanu stepped forward, his voice rising above the hum of the mechanism. Behold the seventh season, the gift of Khepri. Within this sacred time, we are as gods. The anomaly manifested as a shimmering dome of light that enveloped the courtyard. Inside the dome, reality itself seemed to shift. Workers lifted massive stone blocks with ease, their muscles barely straining. A priest planted a seed in the ground, and within moments, a stalk of wheat burst forth, golden and ripe. The crowd erupted in cheers and cries of wonder. Nefermat stepped into the anomaly, his face lit with triumph. With this power, he declared, Egypt will reign eternal. Let all nations tremble before the might of the seventh season. Back in the present, Leila and her team faced a dilemma. They had successfully reconstructed a portion of the mechanism, but they were divided on whether to activate it. Omar was particularly vocal in his opposition. Leila, this is insane, he said. We're talking about manipulating the fabric of reality. We don't know what kind of consequences this could have. I understand your concerns, Omar, Leila replied, but think about what we could learn. This anomaly allowed the Egyptians to achieve the impossible. If we can study it, we might unlock secrets that could revolutionize science and technology. And what if it destabilizes the environment? Or worse, what if it affects us physically? You've read the accounts of temporal sickness. Do you want to risk our lives for this? Leila hesitated, her resolve wavering. She knew Omar was right to be cautious, but the allure of the seventh season was too powerful to ignore. It was a chance to rewrite history, to uncover the truth behind one of humanity's greatest mysteries. We'll proceed with caution, she said finally. But we have to try. This is what we came here for. As the team began the final preparations to test the mechanism, the desert around them grew eerily silent. The wind stopped, and the stars above seemed to shimmer more brightly than usual. Leila couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something extraordinary and dangerous. The seventh season was about to return. The reconstructed mechanism gleamed under the harsh lights of the lab tent, its bronze components polished to a mirror shine. Leila Farouk stood before the ancient artifact, her heart pounding with anticipation. Despite Omar's protests and her own lingering doubts, she had decided to test the mechanism's capabilities. She needed answers that had eluded generations of archaeologists and historians. Outside, the Sahara Desert stretched endlessly into the horizon, its golden dunes bathed in the silvery light of the waxing moon. The night was still, almost unnaturally so, as if the desert itself were holding its breath. "Are you sure about this?" Omar's voice cut through the silence, heavy with concern. He stood at the edge of the tent, his arms crossed defensively. "Once we activate this thing, there's no telling what might happen." Leila turned to him, her expression resolute. "I know the risks, Omar. But think about what this could mean for humanity. If the ancient Egyptians managed to harness this anomaly, it's a part of our history, a part we've completely misunderstood. We owe it to the world to uncover the truth." Omar sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Just promise me we'll proceed cautiously. If anything feels off, we shut it down immediately." "Agreed," Leila said, giving him a reassuring nod. Flashback to 2500 BCE. The temple courtyard was alive with activity as Pharaoh Nefermat and his entourage gathered for the second activation of the Khepri mechanism. The success of the first trial had spread like wildfire across the kingdom, and the pharaoh was eager to push the anomaly's potential even further. Priests chanted hymns to Khepri, their voices echoing through the stone walls of the temple as the workers made final adjustments to the mechanism. Hikanu, the royal astronomer, stood at the center of the platform, his hands clasped behind his back as he supervised the preparations. His mind raced with possibilities. If they could perfect the alignment of the sundial and mirrors, they might be able to extend the anomaly's influence beyond the temple grounds. Entire construction sites could be enveloped in the seventh season, allowing the pharaoh's grandest architectural visions to materialize with unprecedented speed. But Hikanu also carried a heavy burden. The first activation had revealed the darker side of the anomaly. Several workers who had spent prolonged periods within the bubble had reported strange symptoms: blurred vision, dizziness, and an accelerated aging process. Hikanu had dismissed these cases as anomalies themselves, isolated incidents that could be mitigated with proper precautions. Yet, in the depths of his mind, a seed of doubt had taken root. "My pharaoh," Hikanu said as Nefermat approached the platform, flanked by his guards. "The mechanism is ready. When the Sothic star reaches its zenith, we will begin the ritual." "Good," Nefermat replied, his tone brimming with confidence. "This is the dawn of a new era, Hikanu. An era in which Egypt will reign supreme, its glory unmatched by any other nation." Hikanu bowed his head. "Indeed, my pharaoh. But we must proceed with care. The anomaly is unpredictable." Nefermat waved a dismissive hand. "Leave the caution to the priests. Your task is to unlock the secrets of the seventh season. Do not let fear hinder your progress." In the present day, Leila stood over the mechanism, consulting the ancient texts her team had painstakingly translated. The instructions for activating the anomaly were clear but intricate. The sundial had to be aligned precisely with the constellation of Orion, its seventh segment illuminated by starlight. Meanwhile, the mirrored panels surrounding the mechanism needed to focus the light onto the central dial, creating what the texts described as a cosmic resonance. "Okay," Leila said, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Let's begin. Omar, start adjusting the mirrors. Hassan, keep an eye on the magnetic readings. If anything spikes, let me know immediately." The team moved with practiced efficiency, their earlier disagreements set aside in the face of the monumental task before them. As Omar and the other researchers adjusted the mirrors, the moonlight began to reflect off their surfaces, casting intricate patterns onto the sundial. The seventh segment shimmered faintly, its gemstones catching the light in a way that seemed almost deliberate. "Magnetic readings are increasing," Hassan reported, his voice tinged with awe. "It's subtle, but it's there." "Good," Leila said, her eyes fixed on the sundial. Let's keep going. As the team continued their work, the air inside the tent grew heavy, charged with an almost palpable energy. Leila felt a strange sensation in her chest, as if her heartbeat were syncing with the rhythm of the mechanism. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something extraordinary. Flashback to 2500 BCE. The second activation of the Khepri mechanism began as the Sothic star reached its zenith. The priests chanted louder, their voices rising in unison as the light of Sirius converged on the sundial. The mechanism hummed to life, its gears spinning with a precision that defied its seemingly primitive construction. Within moments, the anomaly manifested. A shimmering dome of light enveloped the temple courtyard, its edges pulsating with a golden glow. Inside the bubble, the air felt thick yet invigorating, as if every breath carried a surge of energy. Workers moved with superhuman speed and strength, lifting massive stone blocks and assembling intricate structures as if by magic. Nephimat watched in awe as his vision unfolded before him. "This is the power of the gods," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "With this, Egypt will be eternal." But Hikanu's attention was elsewhere. He noticed one of the priests stumble, his face pale and his hands trembling. The man fell to the ground, clutching his chest as if struggling to breathe. Hikanu rushed to his side, his heart sinking. "What's happening to him?" Hikanu demanded, turning to one of his assistants. I don't know," the assistant stammered. "It's as if his body is rejecting the anomaly." Hikanu's mind raced as he recalled the earlier reports of temporal sickness. The symptoms were worsening, and he knew that if they didn't find a way to stabilize the anomaly, the consequences could be catastrophic. The shimmering light began to appear inside the tent, a faint golden glow that danced along the edges of the mirrors. Leila felt a chill run down her spine as the anomaly began to take shape. The air grew thicker, charged with an energy that seemed to vibrate through her very being. "Readings are spiking," Hassan called out. "Magnetic fluctuations are off the charts." "Hold steady," Leila said, her voice firm. "We're almost there." Suddenly, the sundial emitted a blinding flash of light, and the entire tent was bathed in a golden hue. For a brief moment, time seemed to stop. Leila looked around, her movements feeling slow and deliberate, as if she were moving through water. The team stared in awe as objects within the tent appeared to float weightlessly, defying gravity. "It's happening," Omar whispered, his earlier skepticism replaced by sheer wonder. But the wonder was short-lived. One of the younger researchers collapsed, clutching his chest and gasping for air. "Leila!" Omar shouted. "Something's wrong." Leila rushed to the researcher's side, her heart pounding. The man's skin was pale, and his breathing was shallow. "Get him outside," she ordered. "Now." As the team scrambled to carry the man out of the tent, Leila turned back to the mechanism. The shimmering dome of light was expanding, its edges beginning to ripple erratically. She realized with a sinking feeling that the anomaly was unstable. "Shut it down," she shouted to Omar. "Now." Omar moved quickly, dismantling the mirrors and disrupting the alignment of the sundial. Within moments, the golden light faded, and the anomaly collapsed. The air inside the tent returned to normal, but the weight of what they had just witnessed lingered heavily. Leila stood in silence, her mind racing. They had glimpsed the seventh season, a window into a reality beyond their own. But at what cost? The ancient Egyptians had unlocked this power, but they had also paid a terrible price. And now, it was up to her team to decide whether to continue their experiments or bury the secrets of the seventh season forever. The desert air outside the tent was thick with tension as Leila Farouk stood over her fallen colleague. The young researcher Ali had been pale and disoriented when they carried him out of the shimmering anomaly, and though his breathing had stabilized, his condition was far from normal. "His pulse is erratic," Omar said, kneeling beside Ali with a flashlight in hand. "It's like his body doesn't know what time it's in." Leila glanced back toward the tent where the mechanism stood dormant, its golden sundial now dim and lifeless. "Temporal sickness," she murmured, recalling the ancient texts they had translated. The Egyptians had documented similar effects: rapid aging, disorientation, even death, for those exposed too long to Peret-Ankh, the 7th season. Omar rose to his feet and turned to Leila, his expression grim. This is exactly what I was afraid of. That thing isn't just a scientific anomaly, it's a Pandora's box. And you just opened it. Leila didn't respond immediately. She stared out at the vast expanse of desert, her thoughts racing. The anomaly's potential was undeniable, but so were its dangers. They had come too far to turn back now, yet the risks loomed larger than ever. The shimmering dome of the anomaly cast a golden glow over the temple courtyard, illuminating the awestruck faces of the workers and priests. Inside the dome, reality itself was shifting. Massive stone blocks floated effortlessly, guided by the hands of workers who moved with an ease that defied explanation. Tools sharpened themselves, and grains of sand seemed to dance in midair, suspended like stars in the night sky. But the anomaly's wonders came at a cost. Hikanu, the royal astronomer, had stationed observers at the edges of the dome to document its effects. Over the past few hours, the symptoms of temporal sickness had become more pronounced. Workers reported blurred vision and a strange buzzing sensation in their ears. One man's hair had turned stark white, though he was only in his 30s. Hikanu stood beside Pharaoh Nephamat, who watched the activity within the dome with an expression of triumph. "Do you see, Hikanu?" the pharaoh said, his voice brimming with pride. "This is the will of the gods. With this power, we will build monuments that will stand for eternity." "My pharaoh," Hikanu began hesitantly, "the anomaly is unstable. The longer we expose our people to it, the greater the risks. Already, I have seen signs of—" Nephamat cut him off with a dismissive wave. "Sacrifices are necessary for progress, Hikanu. If a few lives are lost to secure the glory of Egypt, so be it." Hikanu bowed his head, but his mind was troubled. He had devoted his life to unraveling the mysteries of the cosmos, yet this newfound power felt unnatural, even dangerous. The gods' gifts, he knew, often came with hidden costs. Present day, inside the tent, the mechanism sat dormant, its golden components now tarnished and inert. Leila's team had gathered outside, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of a campfire. Ollie lay nearby on a stretcher, his condition stable but concerning. "We can't keep doing this," Omar said, breaking the tense silence. "Whatever the Egyptians discovered, it wasn't meant to be tampered with. You saw what happened to Ollie. What if the next person isn't so lucky?" Leila looked around at the faces of her team, her heart heavy with indecision. "I understand your concerns," she said finally. "But this is more than just a scientific curiosity. It's a part of our history, a part we've ignored for too long. If we stop now, we may never get another chance to understand it. And what happens if we lose control of it?" Omar shot back. "What if the anomaly spreads beyond this camp? Do you really want to risk the lives of everyone in the region for the sake of understanding?" Leila didn't have an answer. She turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the desert seemed to stretch on forever. The stars above were unusually bright, their light twinkling like distant whispers of the past. Flashback to 2500 BCE. Hikanu's worst fears were realized when one of the workers collapsed inside the dome, his body convulsing violently. The other workers rushed to his aid, but it was too late. The man's skin had withered, his face aged beyond recognition. Hikanu ordered the anomaly deactivated immediately, his voice trembling with urgency. The priests scrambled to realign the mirrors and disrupt the mechanism's alignment with the stars. Slowly, the shimmering dome began to fade, its golden light dissipating like mist under the morning sun. When the anomaly was gone, the courtyard returned to its natural state, but the damage had been done. Nephamat strode onto the platform, his expression dark. "Why have you stopped the ritual, Hikanu?" "My pharaoh," Hikanu said, bowing low, "the anomaly is unstable. If we continue to use it without understanding its full effects, we risk destroying ourselves." Nephamat's eyes narrowed. "Do not speak of risks, Hikanu. Speak only of results. Egypt's future depends on this power, and I will not allow fear to stand in the way of our destiny." Hikanu said nothing, but in his heart, he resolved to find a way to control, or perhaps even end, the anomaly. The pharaoh's ambition was boundless, but Hikanu feared that ambition would lead to Egypt's downfall. In the present day, Leila woke in the middle of the night, unable to shake the feeling that she was being watched. The camp was quiet, the only sound the faint rustling of the desert wind. She stepped out of her tent, wrapping a scarf around her shoulders to ward off the chill. The mechanism gleamed faintly in the moonlight, its presence both alluring and foreboding. Leila approached it cautiously, her mind replaying the events of the day. The shimmering dome, the weightlessness, Ali's collapse, it all felt like a dream, surreal and yet undeniably real. As she stood before the artifact, she noticed something strange. The seventh segment of the sundial was glowing faintly, its gemstones pulsing with a soft, golden light. Leila's breath caught in her throat as she reached out to touch it. The moment her fingers brushed the surface, a surge of energy shot through her, and the world around her seemed to dissolve. Leila found herself standing in a landscape that defied description. The sky was a kaleidoscope of colors, shifting and swirling like a living painting. The ground beneath her feet was solid yet translucent, and she could see rivers of light flowing beneath its surface. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice echoing in the strange, otherworldly space. A figure appeared before her, its form indistinct but radiating an aura of power. It spoke in a voice that was both ancient and familiar. "You stand within the seventh season, a place where the boundaries of time and space are thin. This is the gift, and the curse, of those who seek to bend the fabric of reality." Leila felt a chill run down her spine. "Who are you?" "I am Khepri, the keeper of time," the figure said. "The Egyptians called upon my power to build their empire, but they did not understand the price of such ambition. Tell me, seeker of knowledge, are you prepared to pay that price?" Leila hesitated, her mind racing. The answers she sought were within her grasp, but at what cost? Before she could respond, the vision dissolved, and she was back in the desert, her heart pounding in her chest. The sundial's glow faded, and the night returned to its familiar stillness. Leila sank to her knees, her mind reeling. The consequences of the anomaly were more profound, and more dangerous, than she had ever imagined. She had glimpsed the truth, but it was a truth that threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew. And she wasn't sure if humanity was ready for it. The camp buzzed with nervous energy as the team reconvened the following morning. Ollie was stable but weak, resting in one of the medical tents while Omar and the rest of the team debated their next move. Leila Farouk sat apart from the group, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the sun rose over the dunes, painting the desert in hues of gold and red. She replayed the vision of the seventh season in her mind, the words of the enigmatic figure still echoing. "Are you prepared to pay the price?" Her thoughts were interrupted by Omar's sharp voice. "Leila, we need to decide what to do with the mechanism. We can't leave it here for someone else to find, but we can't risk activating it again either." Leila turned to face him, her expression resolute. "We need to seal it. Bury it where no one can reach it. The anomaly is too dangerous to be left exposed." Omar looked relieved but skeptical. "You're serious? After everything, you're willing to let it go?" Leila hesitated. "Not entirely. I'll record everything we've learned, the translations, the mechanics, the effects, so the knowledge isn't lost. But the mechanism itself must be hidden. Humanity isn't ready for this kind of power." Omar nodded slowly. "Finally, we agree on something." Flashback to 2500 BCE. Pharaoh Nefermat stood on the steps of the temple, watching as his workers dismantled the Khepri mechanism. After Hikanu's warnings and a series of increasingly severe incidents, Nefermat had reluctantly ordered the anomaly sealed. The workers moved quickly, dismantling the mirrors and scattering the pieces of the mechanism across distant sites to prevent it from being reassembled. Hikanu oversaw the process, his relief tempered by lingering unease. He knew the pharaoh's decision was born of pragmatism, not humility. Nefermat's ambition remained unchecked, and Hikanu feared the mechanism's secrets would one day resurface. The last piece of the sundial, a golden shard inscribed with the symbols of Peret-Ankh, was placed in a hidden chamber deep beneath the temple. The priests sealed the chamber with layers of stone and an inscription: "Let none disturb the gift of Khepri, lest they unmake the world." In the present day, Leila and her team began the arduous task of dismantling the mechanism. Every piece was catalogued and packed for transport to a secure location where it would be buried. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the camp was filled with the sounds of tools and quiet murmurs, each team member weighed down by the gravity of their work. Omar approached Leila, holding a small, golden fragment. "This was embedded in the base of the sundial," he said, handing it to her. The fragment was engraved with a single hieroglyph, a scarab surrounded by 7 stars. Leila traced the glyph with her finger. "Khepri," she whispered. The sight of the fragment stirred a mix of awe and dread. It was a reminder of the power they had unleashed, and the responsibility that now lay on their shoulders. That night, Leila woke to the sound of distant whispers. She sat up in her tent, her heart racing. The camp was silent, save for the soft rustling of the wind. But the whispers grew louder, beckoning her. She stepped outside, the cold desert air biting at her skin. The mechanism, though partially dismantled, shimmered faintly under the starlight. Leila felt an irresistible pull, as if the artifact itself was calling to her. Against her better judgment, she approached it. The moment her fingers touched the golden surface, the world shifted. Leila was no longer in the desert. She stood in the 7th season once more, its surreal landscape stretching endlessly around her. The figure of Khepri appeared, more distinct this time, his scarab-headed form glowing with celestial light. "You have returned," Khepri said, his voice resonating like a cosmic echo. "Why do you disturb the balance?" "I need to understand," Leila said, her voice trembling. "Why was this power given to the Egyptians? Why does it still linger here?" Khepri tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "The 7th season is neither a gift nor a curse. It is a wound in the fabric of time, born of humanity's desire to transcend its limits. The Egyptians sought to wield it, but their ambition outstripped their wisdom. And now, you stand at the same crossroads." Leila clenched her fists. "Then help me. Show me how to seal it for good." Khepri's form flickered, his voice growing softer. "To seal the wound, you must embrace its source. The sundial, the mechanism, they are but conduits. The true key lies within the stars themselves. You must sever the connection between this world and the anomaly." Leila's heart sank. Severing the connection meant destroying the mechanism entirely. It would mean burying not only the anomaly but also the knowledge it represented. Was she prepared to make that sacrifice? Before she could respond, the vision dissolved, and she was back in the desert. The camp was eerily quiet, the mechanism's faint glow now gone. Leila stood motionless, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. The next morning, Leila gathered her team. "We're going to destroy the mechanism," she announced, her voice firm. "Not just dismantle it, destroy it completely." Omar's eyes widened. "Destroy it? Leila, that knowledge is priceless. Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Leila said. "If we leave even a fragment intact, someone will find it. And if they activate it without understanding the risks." She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. The team worked tirelessly, breaking down the mechanism into unrecognizable pieces. Each component was melted or shattered, the remnants scattered across the desert. The sundial, its golden surface now dulled, was buried deep beneath the sands, far from any trace of civilization. Years later, Leila sat in her small Cairo apartment, surrounded by stacks of notebooks and digital files. She had spent countless nights documenting everything they had discovered: the mechanics of the anomaly, the translations of the hieroglyphs, the visions of the 7th season. But the mechanism itself was gone, its secrets buried forever. As she stared at the final page of her notes, a strange sense of peace washed over her. The anomaly had been a glimpse into something far greater than humanity could comprehend, a reminder of the delicate balance between curiosity and caution. Leila closed the notebook and looked out the window at the sprawling city below. The seventh season was gone, but its legacy lived on, in the towering pyramids, the mysterious hieroglyphs, and the enduring spirit of a civilization that had reached for the stars. Above her, the constellation of Orion glimmered in the night sky, a silent guardian of secrets lost to time. Leila whispered a quiet prayer to Khepri, the keeper of time, and to the countless generations who had safeguarded the mysteries of the seventh season. For now, the anomaly was sealed. But the stars would remember. And perhaps, someday, humanity would be ready to understand.